When we think about a leader's legacy, what really defines it? Is it the powerful, decisive actions they take in a crisis? Or is it the quiet, timeless wisdom they leave behind for future generations? Today, we're looking at exactly that through the lens of George Washington's final days as president. He faced two totally different challenges. One was a test of force, the other, a test of foresight. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Is a leader defined by what they do in the heat of the moment or by the advice they share for the long haul? With Washington, we get a front row seat to both sides of that coin. So we're going to break down these two final tests for him. First up, a major test of his presidential power against an uprising right here at home. And second, a test of his wisdom as he got ready to step down and leave the country with some parting words. Okay, let's jump right into the action. Picture this. It's 1794. The United States is brand new, still trying to figure itself out, and suddenly it's facing its first real internal threat. This whole thing, the Whiskey Rebellion, it wasn't just some small protest. No, this was a serious challenge to the authority of the entire federal government. So what was at the heart of all this drama? Well, it was a classic problem. The new nation was broke. They just fought the Revolutionary War. Alexander Hamilton, the Treasury Secretary, had an idea to raise some cash. His plan was to tax one of the most popular products around, whiskey. The goal was simple: get some money flowing in and get the country on stable financial ground. And things escalated fast. The government puts the tax in place, and almost immediately, farmers out on the western frontier just erupt. We're talking violent protests. See, for them, whiskey was basically a form of currency. So Washington's response? It was absolutely unheard of. He personally led a militia of almost 13,000 soldiers to shut the rebellion down. It was a massive show of federal power, basically sending the message, do not mess with the new government. On the surface, it seems pretty straightforward, right? Who likes paying taxes? But this was something different. What made this one tax so explosive? Well, the answer really comes down to the way life worked out on the frontier. You have to understand, for these farmers, whiskey wasn't just a drink. It was their livelihood. It was money. They didn't have a bunch of cash lying around. What they had was grain. By distilling that grain into whiskey, they could easily transport and trade it. So a tax that demanded cash they simply didn't have, wasn't just an annoyance. It was a direct threat to their entire way of life. So, after proving the power of the presidency with a show of force, Washington starts preparing for his final act, leaving office. And for this one, he chose to use words, not weapons. And that brings us to his legendary farewell address. He could have just quietly retired, but Washington felt like he had one last duty to his country. He decided to publish a letter, an open letter to the American people, offering up all the wisdom he'd gained over the years. This wasn't a law or a decree. Think of it more like a parting gift of advice from the nation's founder. And in that address, two of his main warnings have just echoed through American history. First, he warned everyone against forming political parties. He'd seen the bitter fights between guys like Hamilton and Jefferson in his own cabinet, and he was terrified that parties would just divide the country, distract the government, and even let foreign countries meddle in U.S. affairs. And second, he advised the country to steer clear of permanent alliances. He argued that this new, fragile nation needed to walk its own path without getting tangled up in all of Europe's endless conflicts. Okay, so let's bring this all together. When we look back at the end of Washington's presidency, we see these two completely different sides of his leadership, right? The man of action versus the man of advice. What we're really seeing are two sides of the same legacy. The Whiskey Rebellion pretty much cemented the idea that federal law is the supreme law of the land, period. But think about it. Maybe that whole experience, seeing firsthand how internal divisions could nearly tear the country apart, is what gave his farewell address such power. His advice wasn't just some abstract theory. It was a vision for the future, born from a crisis he had to personally put out. And that brings us right back to today. Of those two big warnings from Washington, which one do you think matters more right now? His fear of political division at home, or his warning about getting tangled up in permanent alliances abroad? It's a question that shows that Washington's final tests, well, they're still with us. Thanks for joining this explainer.